Welcome, brave soul, I am the forgotten storyteller. Before we begin, tap that like button if you dare, and drop a comment below telling me where in the world you're listening from. And if you make it to the end of this video, I hope to see you in the next story. I hope you're ready, because I am. Let's begin. The chill was the first thing that hit you, a damp, bone-seeping cold that even the thickest flannel couldn't fight. It clung to the air in this part of the woods, a perpetual twilight zone where the sun seemed to give up trying to penetrate the dense canopy. Everyone in town knew about these woods. They whispered about them, always in hushed voices, tales of shadows that moved on their own, of whispers carried on the wind that weren't quite human. Nobody went near them, not if they valued their sanity or their life. I, of course, thought they were all a bunch of superstitious morons. My name is Jake, and I'm a journalist. A struggling one, admittedly, but a journalist nonetheless. When I heard the rumors about the RV, the one that always returned empty from a certain rental company, always found abandoned outside their lot after inexplicably leading its occupants into these cursed woods, I smelled a story. A big one. It's just a glitch in the GPS, the owner of Wheels Away RV Rentals had said, a nervous tremor in his voice as he handed me the keys. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. The RV is perfectly fine. Just avoid the Oakwood forest, okay? For your own good. Easy for him to say. Oakwood Forest was exactly where I intended to go. The RV, a hulking beast of metal and fiberglass, was older than I was, but surprisingly well maintained. A faint smell of stale coffee and fear hung in the air, but I shrugged it off. I pre-programmed the GPS with a hiking trail on the opposite side of the county, just to see what would happen. Then, with a deep breath and a surge of adrenaline, I started the engine. The drive was uneventful for the first few hours. The scenery was pleasant, the sun was shining, and I was starting to think the locals were even more gullible than I'd initially assumed. Then, as dusk began to settle, the GPS went haywire. The screen flickered, the programmed route disappeared, and a new one materialized, a thin red line snaking directly towards the heart of Oakwood Forest. I tried to override it, frantically punching in new coordinates, but the system was locked. It was as if the RV or something within it had a mind of its own. Panic began to set in. I pulled over, killed the engine, and ripped the GPS unit from the dashboard. But even without its guidance, the RV seemed drawn to the forest. When I cautiously started the engine again, it lurched forward, turning onto a narrow, overgrown logging road that I hadn't even noticed before. The air grew colder, the trees grew taller, and the silence became oppressive, broken only by the crunch of tires on gravel and the frantic pounding of my own heart. I was officially in Oakwood Forest, and the RV was taking me deeper with every passing moment. Finally, the road ended in a small clearing. In the center stood a dilapidated cabin, its windows dark and lifeless, its front porch sagging under the weight of neglect. A single, flickering light shone from a window in the back. This was at the end of the line. I killed the engine, grabbed my camera and a flashlight, and took a deep, shuddering breath. I wasn't going to lie, I was terrified. But the story was too good to pass up. I had to know what was going on here. I cautiously approached the cabin, the flashlight beam dancing nervously in the darkness. The front door was ajar, creaking ominously in the wind. I pushed it open, stepped inside, and nearly choked on the stench. It was a mixture of mildew, decay, and something else, something indefinably foul that made my stomach churn. The main room was sparsely furnished with a rickety table, a couple of broken chairs, and a fireplace filled with cold ashes. Cobwebs hung like gruesome decorations, and dust lay thick on every surface. But it was what I didn't see that was most unsettling. There were no signs of life, no personal belongings, nothing to indicate who lived here or if anyone lived here at all. Then I heard it. A faint, almost imperceptible sound like a muffled sob coming from somewhere below. My blood turned to ice. There was a basement. I found the entrance hidden beneath a loose floorboard in the corner of the room. The air coming from below was even colder, even fouler. I hesitated for a moment, my hand trembling on the flashlight. Was I really ready for what I might find down there? The answer, I knew, was that I had no choice. The steps were steep and treacherous, and the darkness was absolute. The flashlight beam cut through the gloom, revealing damp, stone walls and a low, arched ceiling. The sobbing grew louder, joined by other sounds, moans and whimpers that sent shivers down my spine. And then I saw them. Dozens of people, men and women of all ages, huddled together in the center of the basement. Their eyes were vacant, their faces gaunt, their bodies emaciated. They looked like shells. Empty vessels. They were the missing campers. They barely reacted to my presence, their gaze fixed on some unseen point in the distance. They were alive in a way, but their spirits were gone. Something had been taken from them, something vital. That's when I heard the footsteps behind me. I whirled around, flashlight raised, and saw him. He was a man in his late 50s, tall and thin, with a gaunt face and eyes that burned with an unsettling intensity. He wore a dark, almost priestly robe, and in his hand he held a strange, ornate box made of some dark, unfamiliar metal. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice a low, rasping whisper. "This is a private collection." I swallowed hard, trying to control my fear. "What have you done to these people?" I demanded. He smiled, a chillingly unsettling expression that showed too much teeth. "I have given them peace," he said. "I have relieved them of the burden of their souls." The soul collector, it clicked in my mind. The legends, the rumors, the whispers in the town. All of it was real. I had stumbled upon a monster. "You're insane," I said, my voice trembling despite my best efforts. "Insane?" he chuckled. "Perhaps. But I am also a benefactor. These people were lost, adrift in a world filled with pain and suffering. I have offered them tranquility. I have given them oblivion." He raised the box, and I saw that it was covered in intricate carvings, symbols that seemed to writhe and shift in the dim light. A faint, ethereal glow emanated from within. "This," he said, "is my instrument. It allows me to extract the essence of a being, the spark of life, you know what I mean, the human soul." He took a step closer, and I instinctively recoiled. "Stay away from me," I warned. He ignored me. "I have been doing this for years," he said. "The RV is simply a tool, a means of bringing me fresh subjects. They are drawn to this place, to the darkness, to the promise of escape." "You're a monster," I repeated, my hand shaking so badly I could barely hold the flashlight steady. "Perhaps," he said again, "but I am also necessary. The world is overflowing with souls, with consciousness. It is a burden on the earth. I am simply thinning out the herd." He raised the box higher, and I felt a strange pulling sensation, a lightness in my chest as if something were trying to escape. I gasped, clutching at my shirt, desperately trying to hold on to whatever it was that he was trying to steal. "Don't resist," he said, his eyes burning into mine. "It will only prolong the pain." I knew I had to do something, anything, to stop him. I lunged forward, knocking the box from his hands. It clattered to the stone floor, the ethereal glow fading as the carvings pulsed with an angry red light. The soul collector roared in fury, his face contorted with rage. He grabbed me, his fingers digging into my arms with surprising strength. "You fool," he screamed. "You have ruined everything." We struggled, grappling in the darkness. He was stronger than he looked, fueled by some dark, unholy energy. I managed to break free, kicking him right between his legs. He stumbled backward, giving me a precious few seconds to react. I grabbed the box, its surface still warm to the touch. I didn't know what it did or how it worked, but I knew it was the key to saving those people. "Get away from it," the soul collector shrieked, lunging for me again. I held the box out in front of me, desperately searching for some way to activate it. I pressed a button, turned a dial, anything to make it work. Suddenly, the box vibrated violently in my hands. The carvings flared with an intense white light, and a wave of energy surged outward, washing over the basement. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The vacant eyes of the campers snapped into focus. They blinked, looked around in confusion, and then, one by one, their faces filled with horror as they realized where they were and what had happened to them. The soul collector screamed, clutching his head in agony. The energy from the box was tearing him apart, disrupting the dark magic he had used to steal their souls. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew I had to keep the box activated. I focused all my energy, all my will, on the device, willing it to continue its work. The light grew brighter, the energy more intense. The soul collector collapsed to the floor, writhing in pain. And then, with a final agonizing scream, he dissolved into dust, leaving only his dark robe and a faint smell of sulfur behind. The light from the box faded, and the vibrations ceased. The box was now inert, its power spent. I dropped it to the floor and stumbled backward, breathing heavily. The campers were still dazed, but they were alive. Their souls, or whatever the soul collector had stolen, had been returned. "We have to get out of here," I said, my voice hoarse. "We need to get out right now." I led them out of the basement, up the rickety steps, and into the fresh air. The sun was beginning to rise, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink. It was the most beautiful sight I had ever seen. We stumbled through the woods, away from the cabin, away from the darkness. When we finally reached the RV, I was exhausted but exhilarated. I had done it. I had faced the monster in the cabin and lived to tell the tale. We piled into the RV and I started the engine. The GPS was still malfunctioning, but I didn't care. I had a compass and a map, and I knew the general direction of the town. As we drove away from Oakwood Forest, I looked back at the clearing where the cabin stood. It seemed darker now, more ominous than ever. I knew that I would never forget what I had seen there. The RV rental company was shocked when I returned, not only with the RV but with all the missing campers. The owner nearly fainted when I told him the story of the soul collector. The police investigated, of course, but they found nothing. The cabin was gone, vanished without a trace. The clearing was just a patch of overgrown weeds. There was no basement, no evidence of the horrors that had taken place there. They chalked it up to mass hysteria, to a group of traumatized campers who had wandered off the trail and gotten lost in the woods. They dismissed my story as a figment of my imagination, a product of stress and sleep deprivation. But I knew the truth. I had seen the soul collector with my own eyes. I had felt the pull of his dark magic. I had saved those people from a fate worse than death. And that, I knew, was a story worth telling. It took me months to write the article, to piece together the fragmented memories of the campers and to weave them into a coherent narrative. When it was finally published, it caused a sensation. People were shocked, horrified, and fascinated. Some hailed me as a hero, others dismissed me as a sensationalist. But I didn't care. I had exposed the truth, and that was all that mattered. I never went back to Oakwood Forest. I never wanted to see that place again. But sometimes late at night, I would still hear the whispers on the wind, the faint echo of the soul collector's voice. And I knew that somewhere in the darkest corners of the world, there were other monsters lurking, waiting to prey on the lost and the vulnerable. And I knew that it was my duty as a journalist to expose them, to shine a light on the darkness, and to protect the innocent from the evils that lurked in the shadows. Even if it meant facing my own fears, even if it meant risking my own soul. Let us know in the comments, would you have faced the soul collector or would you have ran for your life?
Ready for spine-chilling tales that will haunt your thoughts? Subscribe to Forgotten Storyteller for eerie narrations, unsettling mysteries, and haunting stories you won't forget. Hit the bell icon so you never miss a story, because some stories refuse to stay buried. Join us, if you dare,